When the Senate sustained the veto of House Bill 803, they did so because they didn't want to hurt job creation in Mississippi. That bill had a fatal flaw. It would have kept us from getting Toyota or other big projects to come to Mississippi if that bill had been in effect when those projects came. And that means that it would have made it much, much harder for Mississippi to compete for major economic impact projects and large job creation projects in the future. I'm grateful to the Senate for recognizing that. But the good news is we can strengthen our eminent domain laws to protect private property even more strongly than we do now without damaging Mississippi's ability to compete in job creation projects. When the legislature comes back in May, as they will have to do to complete the budget, I will offer as a compromise for everybody concerned that we have very strict practices and procedures that must be followed before anybody's property could be taken for eminent domain for job creation or economic development purposes. Remember, since the beginning of the Republic in the United States Constitution and in the original Mississippi Constitution of 1817 when we were admitted to the Union, the government has always recognized that there will be undesirable and unhappy occasions where it's necessary that private property be taken or damaged for public use. That's been the law from the very beginning of our state and of our country. And the government, if it takes private property for public use, has to pay just compensation for the value of the property or any damage done to the property. That's what we've always followed, and we've never had trouble in Mississippi like this case in Connecticut that brought about all the frenzy about making sure that eminent domain was not abused. And it isn't abused in Mississippi, and it's not going to be abused. But one way to strengthen the protections for private property would be to have a set out statutory set of requirements before anyone's private property could be taken, even with just compensation paid, and relocation assistance if necessary, before it could be taken for job creation or economic development purposes. The way to do that is first make sure the local government agrees. If the state wants to take your property, the local governments ought to agree that it's important enough, and that way the landowner has an appeal to the local governments. If the local governments want to take your property, then the state should have to agree. And that's what I'm proposing. So if the local government has to approve if the state wants to take your property, or the state has to approve if the local governments want to take your property, here's what would happen. The County Board of Supervisors would have to vote, and if the land was within a municipality or partially, the Board of Aldermen of the municipality would have to vote that this project would create so much economic growth and job creation that it deserves to qualify for the use of eminent domain. Then the Mississippi Development Authority would have to certify to the legislature that the project met the standards of the Mississippi Major Economic Impact Act. It wouldn't be some arbitrary political decision. The professionals would make that decision, make the certification to the legislature. Then the House of Representatives would have to vote to take the land by eminent domain or to give the authority to use eminent domain for taking private property. Then the Senate would have to also vote that this project would qualify that eminent domain could be used for the taking of private property, and finally the governor would have to sign the law. Even then, after those 5 steps, local government, MDA, House of Representatives, Senate, governor, all agreeing that this met the standard, even after that you'd have the right to appeal to our court system. To make these practices mandatory by statute would increase protection for private property being taken by eminent domain. As I say, we've never had a problem in Mississippi like that one in Connecticut. We've never had that kind of abuse. We do have to use eminent domain very often, but usually in very, very narrow circumstances for our economic development projects. My compromise will allow us to do both. Have the maximum protection of private property, but also to allow us to go forward with the kinds of projects that we particularly need in this recession, and we'll need when we come back after the recession to get Mississippi's economy back growing, to create jobs. This was really a vote about jobs for Mississippi, and I wanted to make sure you understood that.